Hello, my creepy crew. Miss Story Mystery here with another collection of mysteries and oddities. This episode's collection of tales are spooky and downright weird, including experiencing a strange glitch while driving on a well-known road, the ghost of a girl who ran through the closed door, and a home with paranormal activity that began after the new renters moved in. Sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 13 of Miss Story Mysteries Tales of Mysteries and Oddities. I was alone outside, smoking a cigarette before work one morning at 5 a.m. I was standing in a quiet parking garage with my back turned to a wall a few feet behind me. Out of nowhere, I felt someone shove me from behind against my right shoulder. I actually had to take a full step forwards to regain my balance. Startled, I turned around to see who it was, because I hadn't seen or heard anyone in the area for the several minutes I was out there. No one was there. I still have no idea what happened. When my daughter was about 9 or so, we just moved into a new house in a new town. It wasn't a creepy house or an old house, just a new house. One Saturday morning, she was invited to go to a friend's house to build a snowman and sled. Her friend's mom was going to pick her up, and so all was good. I made sure she ate and had warm clothes on and whatnot, and saw her off and locked the door behind her. After she left, I got back into my bed to sleep more, since it was 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Around 11 a.m. I wake up. I clean on Saturdays, so I turned my music on and started cleaning the bathroom like always. I'm bent over the bathtub cleaning it, and I hear the front door open and close. I then see and hear my daughter's hot pink winter coat swish by as she walked past the bathroom to her room. I say, "Hey, did you have fun?" She didn't answer, but the music was loud and I didn't think much of it. She probably didn't hear me. I switch from the bathtub over to the toilet and start cleaning that. Out of the corner of my eye, I see and hear her pink coat walk back by. I say, "Are you leaving again?" She answered, "Yeah, Mom, love you." I said I loved her too, and then the front door opened and closed. Seconds after she leaves, I realize I should have her take the trash out since she was in boots and a coat. I run to the front door to catch her, unlock and open the door, and look for her. She's not there. I close the door and kind of wonder where she went so fast. I then see on the bookshelf by the door that her lanyard with her house key on it is sitting there. My blood went cold and my stomach dropped. You couldn't lock or unlock the door without a house key from the outside. It was a door with a knob and then locked only with a deadbolt. I knew that I had locked it behind her that morning when she initially left, and I knew I just unlocked it to go call after her. We had 2 house keys, and her lanyard and my car key ring were right there on the bookshelf. At this point, I'm freaking out. She had a tiny red flip phone I'd make her carry, and so I called her. In order not to freak her out, I asked if she had come back by the house for something. She tells me no, and that they've been inside with a movie and hot chocolate for a while. She asks me why, and I said, "Oh, never mind. Have fun, okay?" Before I hang up, she says, "Can you leave the door unlocked? Because I left my house key inside." I was driving home one night, and it was raining pretty hard. I was on the road that leads to my house, a road that I've known all my life. As I was nearly cresting the hill I've gone up 1,000 times, I suddenly was back around 30 feet at the bottom of the hill and experienced the same drive up the hill again. Freaked me out. I pulled over right after that. When I was about 7 years old, I had one of those beds that was like a bunk bed, but the underneath was a tent sort of area for desks or storage. This means that when laying down, you can't see much in your room, let alone the floor. I woke up at perhaps 3 a.m. once to my floorboard squeaking in my room. I was so scared. I was laying down and was too scared to sit up and look. For about 7 minutes, I was hearing the floorboards in my room squeak as if someone was trying really hard to be quiet. Finally, I gained the courage to look, and it was my damn cat. He had snuck into my room before I went to sleep. About 10 years ago, an ex and I took one of those single-use cameras for developing at a 1-hour photo place. When we got our pictures back, there was one in the middle that seemed out of place. It was blurred slightly, as if the camera had been moving when it was taken, but clearly showed some darkish place with several figures in light blue uniforms with matching hats. Neither of us remembered ever being in a place like that, or seeing anyone dressed like that. We naturally thought it was someone else's photo mixed into ours, but something made me pull out and look at the negatives. It was there. It was in the negatives, in the middle of a strip, right between two photos that we had actually taken. There was never any explanation. When I was 13, my family moved into an old farmhouse. In our first week, there was something weird that happened. My brother and mother went to the grocery store. I was alone in the house, upstairs unpacking. I hear noise coming from downstairs. I look out the window, and my mother's car is not returned. I think there is an intruder in the house, so I crept down the stairs with a hatchet. The downstairs is completely dark, except I can see that the light is on in my mother's room. The sound is coming from in that room, and it is getting louder and louder, like someone bouncing off the walls. So I crept up to the edge of the door, screwed my courage to the sticking place, and announced, "I have a gun." In a split second, the noise ceased, the light went out, and a shadow of a person ran out of the room, right past me and down a hallway. I say a shadow of a person because it was not solid, but a translucent, three-dimensional shape of a man sprinting past me so close I could have reached out and touched it. I ran, screaming, back up the stairs and barricaded myself in my room. Later, I told my mother, but she acted like I had imagined it. Years later, she told me that I was so scared that I had scared her, it was her room after all, but that she decided to downplay it to calm me down. Lived in that house many years and never experienced anything else. In junior high, my mom and sister were in my room after school talking to me about my grades. While we're talking, we see a guy dressed in all white walk past my door very quickly. We didn't think anything of it because my stepdad was a painter and wore all white to work every day. After a few minutes, we went out to the living room to ask him how his day was, and nobody was there. We walked around the house and looked out the front window to check for his car. There was nothing. Nobody was there, and the alarm never went off for any doors opening or closing. We all instantly got chills and walked back to my room and closed the door. My phone disappeared. Woke up, watched some stuff on it, put it on my nightstand, and spent the whole morning cleaning my flat. 8th floor, only one locked door, windows were all closed. Lunch break, wanted to check Reddit and stuff, and it was gone. Looked all around, checked whether the door was locked, continued 1 week to not throw anything out and carefully check every bag of garbage twice, disassembled every piece of furniture, and eventually gave up. To this day, Find My iPhone has no entry on where it could be. When I was a kid, younger than 12 maybe, I used to hate sleeping with the door open. I would swear every night I would see dozens of thin and tall silhouettes walking back and forth across my door. Every so often, they would stop in groups of 3 or 4, and it would look like they were staring at me. One time when I was 6, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. The window in the bathroom was right next to the toilet, and we lived on the 2nd floor. The window was blurred so no one could see in. I looked up and saw these bright, luminescent eyes looking in the window. I remember looking at the eyes, and the eyes making an expression as if they were mocking me, and then continuing up the window. Sometimes I think it may have been a dream, or my imagination because I was so young, but a big part of me still feels like it was real. When I was 10, my family lived in this creepy old duplex. My dog at the time was just chilling with me, watching TV. Out of nowhere, he gets up and runs toward the hallway. Then he starts barking non-stop. I go check it out, and it was just an empty hallway. I try to calm him down because he is starting to freak me out. A few minutes later, the light bulb in the hallway pops, and everything goes dark. Now I'm in panic mode. I pick up my dog and make a rush for my room. I waited 4 hours for my parents to come home. I was too afraid to leave my room and call them. Looking back, I'm guessing my dog was able to hear something was up with the light bulb. As a child, I was raised on a small farm. There were 2 barns. The smaller housed our chickens, and the larger housed our horses, goats, whatever we had at the time, and a tool shed. Both these barns had old lighting fixtures, but they never worked from the time we moved into the place. This is quite relevant. One late night, I awoke from my slumber to the sound of loud, joyous music. As the small, adventurous child that I was, I climbed down my bed, slipped on my shoes, and went out the front door. I trudged my way down the acre leading to the large barn, which was howling with this melody. After a short while, I reached the latch gate. Hand after hand, I scaled the bars and hopped down to the ground. I stepped into the mouth of the barn and see every last light blazing with light. No animal in sight. On the lip of the tool shed sat an old boombox. At that time, I heard my mother's voice from carrying across the wind as she bellowed my name. My head whipped around to look at the farmhouse, but when I turned to look back at the barn, the lights were lifeless. The animals still nowhere to be seen. The boombox? Well, it glared at me from the lip of that tool shed. The following morning, I returned to the barn. I slipped on my muddy shoes of the night past, and there sat the old rickety boombox plugged into an outlet which had no power running to it for years. A friend of mine who was a minister in northern Canada told me of a time when several snowmobiles were circling the parish. When he went to see what was going on, he saw that there was nobody driving them. He said it was pretty common to see supernatural occurrences. My parents' house has had a teddy bear in the attic since we moved in. It's a pretty old house, and half of the attic doesn't have flooring, so the floor is basically just fiberglass. Nobody can walk across it, and there isn't anything to lay down as a floor. All the way at the end of the inaccessible half, there is a teddy bear that I swear is in a different position every time I go up there. I went up there once when I was younger, and I kind of had a feeling that I shouldn't look at the teddy bear, so I tried to avoid it, but I couldn't resist glancing at it, and it was just sitting there, looking dead at me. Then, a large metal fan built into the floor of the attic turns on out of nowhere with these giant metal shutters that slam open super loudly, and I just bolted. I worked a summer job at a horse riding camp. After a long day of work, I sat around the campfire with some of the other staff shooting the shit. I should also preface this with the fact that I was completely sober. We were all only about 17 to 19 at the time, at a workplace, so none of us were drinking or anything. We sat somewhat close to the barn, and across from us was the huge field for the horses, and at the far end of that was a little forest thing. A thunderstorm started rolling in, but it was getting late anyway, so everyone started heading off to bed until it was just me sitting there. I love storms, so I sat watching it until it was quite close, the edge of it by the tree line. I was just about to head in because, open fields and thunderstorms aren't such a good place to be. That's when I saw what looked like a slow-motion lightning bolt going up from somewhere beyond the tops of the trees. Maybe this was just lightning creeping along the clouds at an angle that just looked like up, but it made my hair stand up, and a sense of unease filled me. Then, suddenly, there was a source of light from the bottom of the tree line. At first, I thought someone was out there with a flashlight, but it was too high up, maybe twice the height of a person, and the light was very bright, reaching halfway across the field. It bobbed a little, again almost as if someone was walking and looking around with a flashlight, and then started following the tree line, flickering a little as it passed behind tree trunks. After what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute or two, the light disappeared. All the horses were in the barn and everyone was sleeping. There is no way anyone was out there. The only thing I can think of is maybe ball lightning, but I'm not sure. It might not be as spooky as other stories, but still gives me a very uncomfortable, unsettling feeling whenever I remember it. When I was 16, I was riding horses with my friend in the field beside her house. The horse threw me, and I hit my head hard. The next thing I know, I'm on my back in incredible pain staring up at my friend, who is frantically screaming at me. Dazed, my gaze shifted, and then refocused on her friend behind her, a tall, thin man wearing a black suit and an old-fashioned, wide-brimmed hat. He was staring unblinking into my eyes over my friend's shoulder. Days later, she came to visit me in the hospital, and I asked her about the man I'd seen. I thought it was her new boyfriend she'd recently told me about. She told me there was no one there but me and her. Home alone, 17. Parents are away for the weekend. House and woods far from civilization. It's 2 a.m. My 2 dogs are downstairs sleeping. I'm upstairs in my room. Suddenly, dogs erupt into visceral barking and snarling, scared the shit out of me. I cut the lights and lay on the floor so I can hear better. Suddenly, a dog squeals, yelps, then the dogs suddenly stop. Total silence. I'm breathing hard, straining to hear anything, ear pressed to floor. Suddenly, creaking on the stairs. Clear footsteps coming up the stairs. Walking down the hall. Yes, this is absolutely footsteps in my house while I'm alone. They stop right outside my bedroom door. No noises. I try to hold my breath, but I'll pass out if I do, so short breaths. I'm now pressing my hands to the door to try and make sure it stays closed. The footsteps turn back towards the stairs. Slowly they descend the stairs. Then nothing. I strain with all my might to hear something, anything, but there is nothing. I wait what must have been 20 minutes, laying on the floor, trying to hear something, anything, but it's total and complete silence. I decide I have to get out, slowly putting my shoes on and grabbing my keys in the dark to stay undetected. I breathe deeply for courage, then bolt out of my room, fly down the staircase, out the front door, into my car, start it, drive off at high speed. Don't know what to do. Drive around till it's light. Go back home. Slowly and tentatively enter house. Dogs greet me at door. Search house completely with dogs at my side. Nothing. I'm going to preface this by saying I went to a boarding school for 6 years. This boarding school was in the middle of a one-stoplight town and on a hill 800 feet up. The school used to be an old monastery. It was hundreds of years old and huge. 4 stories, including a basement where there was a boiler room and long hallways. I used to be in charge of cleaning the gymnasium at night. Every student had a job that they had to do, either at night or in the morning to help take care of the school. Taught you some practical things and all. Anywho, I was there by myself that night getting ready to start sweeping the gym. The gym had 2 floors to it. The upstairs part was the weightlifting area, and you could see it fully from the bottom part of the gym where the basketball court was. As I stepped into the gym, one of the basketballs starts rolling a bit. I look around to see if any doors are open. None are. I chalk it up to randomness, but see that it is continuing to roll. As I watch it, it makes a full circle around the entire gym and stops right next to my feet. At this point, I'm a bit scared, but figured it was nothing. I heard a creaking coming from the 2nd floor and look up. There is a girl there, just staring right at me. As soon as I made direct eye contact with her, she bolts to the stairs that would take her to me. She let out a scream that I cannot describe. I was terrified and froze in place. Thankfully, she didn't come to me, but took a left and bolted through the main doors of the gym. They didn't open. She just went right through them. I love scary movies. I have no idea why I like torturing myself, but I love getting scared and then having to watch cartoons before bed. Anyway, my boyfriend took me out on a date night for dinner and a movie. I was super stoked because we were going to see the next Paranormal movie, and the first one had me jumping out of my seat more than a few times. So, we go see the movie. I was all hyped up and scared, but it was a good time. Everything was normal. We get in the car and drive home to our apartment, and my stomach drops. Our front door is open. My boyfriend immediately asks if I forgot to lock the door, and I admitted that I remember him locking the door since I decided against bringing my keys. After a moment of what do we do, my boyfriend enters first and quickly takes a look around before deciding that no one was there and nothing was stolen. We made sure to lock and chain the door so we can relax before bed. I'm in the kitchen when my boyfriend yells for me. I walk over and he looks freaked out. He explains that he was about to open the bedroom door when it opened by itself. It had to just be a draft, right? Right. So, We get ready for bed, and I go to leave the bedroom, and the door does the same thing for me. Okay, weird, but not impossible that there was some kind of draft. Eventually, we had to sleep. I woke up to pitch black, to hearing my boyfriend talking. My eyes were still adjusting to the dark, but I could tell he was feeling around the blankets as if he was looking for something. I finally am able to see he is sitting upright and muttering to himself like he's frantically searching for something. I groan and push at him. "What are you doing?" My boyfriend huffed. "I'm looking." I knew he was sleep-talking, so I played along. "Looking for what?" I smiled, waiting for a stupid, silly response that I could have endless hours of making fun of him the next day. "I'm looking for her." He stressed, now sounding worried and confused. My stomach tightened in nervousness, and I quickly scanned our room and saw nothing out of place. After a few moments, I went to ask him what he was talking about. His reply was the same. "I'm looking for her." Now he sounded incredibly stressed, like his sister was missing or something. I pushed him again and told him to go back to sleep, but he wouldn't budge and kept feeling around. That was when he froze. Absolutely stopped moving and breathing. I'm watching him, my heart beating against my rib cage. Then he smiled, and his whole body relaxed. "Ah, that's right. She's under the bed," and promptly laid down and went back to sleep. One time, I genuinely thought someone's wallet had spontaneously burst into flames. I looked over, and that shit burst into flames as he was paying for his groceries. The man holding the wallet didn't react at all, so I was about to warn him when the flames just disappeared. I asked my coworker if he had just seen a crazy wallet fire, but he had no idea what I was talking about. It was so real, I even asked the manager to let me see the security footage. Of course, nothing was there. Easily one of the most confusing moments of my life. When I was about 10 years old, I was staying at a friend's cottage for a few days. We were staying in a room with 2 beds side by side, and I couldn't sleep that night, but my friend fell fast asleep within minutes of going to bed and was snoring quite loudly, which kept me up. The room was dark, and all of a sudden, a small boy about 5 years old appears out of thin air at the foot of her bed, sitting down, swinging his legs off the side of the wooden bed frame. He was translucent, kind of gray, and bright white, almost glowing in the darkness. And he was wearing overalls and an old-school flat cap. I was in shock and kept pinching myself and asking if this was real, and shut my eyes as tightly as possible and then opened them again to see if my eyes were playing tricks on me somehow. I got so afraid, I hid under the blankets and kept repeating, "Make this stop, please don't be real." And then, when I peeked back out from under the covers, the little boy turned around and took notice of me and started smiling at me. But his smile appeared distorted and menacing. I started screaming at the top of my lungs, and my friend's mom came barging in and turned on the lights. The little boy vanished, and when I told her what I saw, she brushed it off as just a bad dream. I know 100% I was awake when this happened, and I had never been so creeped out in my life. I have experienced plenty of weird stuff, and it usually doesn't bother me. But there is something around the area I live in currently. It's pale, tall, and built like a stick. Everything seems scared of it. It usually shows up around dusk and then slinks off at dawn. Whenever it's around, the animals will hide or freak out. I know that it has come up to our windows before, and I know it stalked me at least once. My automatic assumption when I first encountered it was mountain lion, but I have seen it since then, and it walks on two legs, but crouches and runs like an animal. If this was a bear, it would not be so stick-like. It's unexplained and possibly paranormal. I hope it's not paranormal, because some larger livestock have gone missing, only to be found shredded later. And no, it can't be coyotes. Even the coyotes are scared of this thing. So this happened when I was in the 7th grade. I had to do a school project where me and my group had to reenact a Shakespeare play. I don't remember exactly what play it was, but I remember a lot of the scenes took place in a forest, so after school one day, we went out to the forest to film the scenes we needed. When me and my friend were done filming some of our scenes, we decided to walk through the forest a bit. As we are walking, I noticed something in the distance, so I stopped to look at it. Keep in mind, this was during broad daylight. So, as I'm looking at this thing in the distance, way across the forest, I notice it's a really dark figure, and almost in the shape of a human, but not exactly. This freaked me out, so I pointed out to my friend to make sure I wasn't crazy, and sure enough, he sees it too. Then, as I am sort of poking my head out from the side of a tree to look at this thing, I decide to move my head to the other side of the tree to get a better look. That's when this thing does the exact same thing as me, as if it's mimicking my movement. We both were super scared, so we ran as far away from there as possible. To this day, I still wonder what it was that I saw. When my sister was 7, she was getting ready for school, and she was being a brat about it. So she went and stood on the front porch to hide from my mother. An old man in a blue suit approached her, gave her a rock of fool's gold, and told her to listen to her mother. We live on a dead end, and we never saw him again. When I was 14, my mother and I moved back into my old childhood home that we had rented out for 4 years while we dealt with family stuff in another state. Keep in mind, we had never felt any negative presence or spirits while living there for years beforehand. Our renters would call us every now and then and say that their plates would fly out of the open cabinets and shatter across the room. It sounded ridiculous to us, and we couldn't really do anything, so we pretty much ignored them and thought they were just imagining things. Fast forward a couple years, and we moved back into the house, and there were tons of boxes laying around from our move. I didn't work when I was 14, so that summer I was in the house a lot while my mom was at work, and I often heard the moving boxes being shuffled around in my mom's room. My room is downstairs, and hers was directly above me upstairs. I kind of ignored it and didn't really want to mess with whatever was happening up there, so I didn't say anything. A couple months later, my older sister moved back home with us, and she stayed in our guest room upstairs next to our mom's room. She worked late hours, and so she would be awake watching TV while my mom and I were sleeping. One night, she said she heard the moving boxes so loud in my mom's room that she went to go ask my mom to stop unpacking because it was bothering her. And when she opened the door to my mom's room, the noise stopped, and she saw my mom asleep in her bed. She freaked out and told my mom in the morning, where I admitted to hearing the boxes too. About a week later, my mom came home to her room and saw that the clothes had been taken out of her moving boxes, folded, and put in between the boxes. That one still really puzzles us. The whole encounter was spread out over like 8 months or something, so things slowly started to escalate. One night, I'm downstairs in my room and hear a woman crying in our living room. I thought it was my mom, and so I went to go check on her. I get to the living room, switch on the lights, and the crying stops, and no one's there. Around the same time, my mother claimed she heard a small child yelling "Mama" from the bottom of the stairs, and when she went to check, There was no one, nothing there, and our 2 dogs were freaking out at the top of the stairs, but wouldn't go down either. One night, I was sleeping in my room and woke up feeling a light pinch and something very heavy on my whole body, and no matter what I did, I felt like I couldn't move. When I was able to finally get up, I ran up to my mother's room and I started sleeping in her room every night from then on. There was also an unexplained bruise when I woke up that morning, and I thought it was from the pinch, but I think I was just freaking myself out and got the bruise from somewhere else. Our back kitchen doors are glass, so when you're walking into the kitchen, you can see behind you if you're looking at the glass doors. One night, my mom walked into the kitchen and saw a man behind her in the reflection, walking out of our bathroom into our stairs and disappeared. The worst night was when I woke up in the dark in my mom's room and saw a very distinct figure in the corner of the room. It was covered in black clothing, head to toe, and it didn't move. I stared for a pretty long time because the head on the figure seemed so distorted and almost like a balloon. I was frozen with fear and just turned back over until I fell back asleep. I told my mom in the morning, and it was the breaking point for us. It seemed like my mom and I were experiencing both very different things, but we found out the reason for this after digging into the history of our old New England house. It turns out that in the early 1900s, a woman named Mary Remby had bought our house for $1 and lived in it with her and a child. According to an old census, the child had died 1 year, but we couldn't track down any more information about the child. Turns out there was an old guy down the street who was actually alive while Mary lived in our house. He used to try and sell berries to her, but he said she would never buy and always wore head to toe black and seemed angry most of the time. My mom and I figured this was after her daughter had passed away, and she was mad at the world. We also found out that she had 2 husbands, one divorced and one passed away. We did some more digging and found out that she was committed to the old Danvers State Hospital, possibly for some BS hysteria sexist reason, or maybe for depression or something. We never figured out the reason. Eventually, she died of a botched lobotomy at the state hospital, and the hospital tried to claim it was a heart attack or something that went wrong with her heart. After the family went to reclaim her body, they saw how distorted her head was and called BS on their cause of death and sued the hospital. We found her burial place in a cemetery in town and brought flowers. All of this information was helpful, but we still had paranormal experiences in the house. We consulted a local medium who helped sage, talk to the spirits, and cleanse the rooms. When the medium got to my mom's room, the room that both me, her, and our 2 dogs were seeking refuge in for the past couple of months, she said that this room had the most negative energy. I never believed in anything paranormal before this, but the medium's ritual really did make the whole house feel lighter. The medium figured that because I was the daughter figure in the house, the mom attached to me and I only heard and saw the mom. And because my mom was the mother figure, the young daughter attached to my mom. The medium claimed that she saw Mary and her daughter holding hands, walking towards the light after the cleansing. Afterwards, we planted a rose bush in our backyard to memorialize Mary and her time here on this earth and in our home. Acknowledging her and her pain was really important in moving on. The medium also asked about any renovations in the house, as that can stir up paranormal activity that has laid dormant for years, and suddenly, it all clicked. While we had renters in our house, we paid to renovate our bathroom. The guy called and said he found an old door in our bathroom, meaning that our bathroom used to be an old side entrance into the house, and he asked if he could rip it out. We said yes. Shortly after that renovation was when the renters called us about the flying plates. While we never experienced something as harmful as flying plates, we partly attribute that to the renter family's negative energy. They had a large, semi-hoarding family, with one daughter who was an addict, and 3 kids that were all born addicted. Something I forgot to include was background info on the guy my mom saw in the house. Some digging into our house's history found that the house used to be a brothel in the 1800s, and the man using an old side entrance seemed to fit that narrative. It also used to be a summer camp with a pool in the 1950s, which isn't necessary to include, but thought was interesting. 7 years later, and we don't feel anything in the home now. Granted, I don't live there full-time anymore. I'm thankful we enlisted the help of a medium, because it was important to make us feel safe in our home again, but to also acknowledge the presence of those who lived there before us. When I was a kid, the house I grew up in had a window above the doors. This one night, I hear someone walking on the landing by the bathroom. The footsteps start towards my door at the other end. When the footsteps reach my door, I start to hear tapping on the window above it. I look, and I can't see anything. The footsteps then go back to the bathroom, and the cycle repeats a few more times. Never experienced anything like that before or since. I saw what I think was a Hell Hound. This happened about 10 years ago. I was up late at night. I think it was somewhere around 3 a.m. I had to use the bathroom, so I left my room and looked towards the front of the house, which is basically one long hallway. My parents' room was that way, and so was the bathroom. There was a light left on so they could leave their room and use the bathroom. So anyway, I leave my room, look down the hall, and in the light, I can see a black mass laying down in the room before the bathroom, blocking the light from the bathroom. I stood there, literally paralyzed by fear, staring at this black mass that looked like the shape of a large dog. I'd say Rottweiler-sized, and it was moving. I could see it breathing. I stared at it for at least 2 to 3 minutes before I finally convinced my legs to move so I could hit the light. Just before I hit and turned the light on, I saw it move, saw a flash of red, and then, as soon as I flicked the light on, it was gone. It up and disappeared. I flicked the light on and off a couple times, but it was gone. There was nothing there. Well, my friends, that is all for episode 13. I hope you enjoyed these tales. If you did, please like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And consider sharing my channel with a friend, as this will greatly help me out as I am growing my channel. And if you have a true story that you'd like to share, please send an email to itsmizstorymystery@gmail.com. Next week, I'll be visiting a well-known haunted hotel in the United States, so perhaps I'll have another personal ghost story to share with you soon. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay spooky.